Hello everyone. On this channel, I review bodybuilders, athletes, and actors. In one word, I try to cover everyone who is associated with iron sports. For me, today's hero is synonymous with weightlifting. And first of all, I always associate him with Yuri Vlasov, who during his active performances raised the level of strength to previously unimaginable proportions, and at the same time was always a well-mannered and intelligent person. He became the first person in the world who managed to push a barbell weighing more than 200 kilograms. Vlasov became world champion 4 times and won the European Championship 7 times, demonstrating unattainable skill and strength. At the Olympic Games, he brought the USSR gold and became a national hero, the epitome of physical strength. His technique of performing exercises was considered a benchmark, and his performances could almost always be called impeccable. The athlete not only won, but also regularly set world records, overtaking time and rivals. He admitted that he always tried to walk to the maximum, always tried to show the maximum level of strength, and he was not interested in raising the record by 2.5 kilograms or 5 kilograms. No, he always gave his best in competitions, as long as he had the strength. He often won by a huge margin and turned the competition into his personal arena of strength. Even the rivals admitted that fighting Vlasov was like fighting a car. His phenomenal talent was combined with discipline and intelligence, and after completing his sports career, he remained in history precisely as a symbol of strength. Yuri Vlasov joined weightlifting relatively late, at the age of 22, in 1956. Prior to that, he studied at the Air Force Academy and practiced various sports. In general, he has been actively involved in sports since the age of 14, but it was the barbell that became his life's work back then, and it was in this sport that he was able to reach unprecedented heights. 3 years later, in 1959, he won his first world championship. He became an absolute sensation. He was 25 years old at the time, and in 1960, at the age of 26, Vlasov won gold at the Olympic Games in Rome and set several world records. From 1961 to 1963, he became world champion 3 times. The culmination of the European and World Weightlifting Championships in Budapest was the meeting of American Norbert Szymanski with Soviet weightlifter Yuri Vlasov. He was the European champion 7 times, and in 1964, the Olympic weightlifting competitions in Tokyo aroused increased interest. Yuri Vlasov was still the undisputed leader of the national team. His main opponent in Tokyo was his colleague on the USSR national team, Leonid Jabotinsky. Vlasov weighed 136.4 kilograms, Jabotinsky 154.4 kilograms in the main heavyweight clash. In the first competitive movement, the bench press, Vlasov is ahead of Jabotinsky by 10 kilos, setting a new world record of 197.5 kilos. In the snatch, Yuri takes 162 against Leonid's 167.5 kg. And in the 4th attempt, which is no longer an official competition, he breaks the world record of 172.5 kg. But the total gap is reduced to 5 kg. Vlasov is still in the lead. The main intrigue of the Tokyo Olympics played out in the 3rd exercise, the clean and jerk. According to the memoirs of both participants, it was a strategic game in which Jabotinsky was destined to win. In the 3rd attempt, he pushes 217.5 kilograms, overtaking Vlasov 210 kg, and becoming the Olympic champion of Tokyo. Yuri Vlasov is an Olympic silver medalist, a true idol of millions. After that, he announced his retirement in 1965 at the age of 31. Devastated by the constant struggle on the platform and in the gym, Yuri Vlasov stopped professional training after the Tokyo competitions. But 3 years later, in 1968, he made a resounding comeback and tried to qualify for the Olympics in Mexico City again. Resuming training in 1967 at the Moscow Championships, Yuri sets the last world record in the bench press, 190, for which he gets about $850. In 1968, Vlasov officially retired from big-time sports, retiring from military service when he was 34 years old. The athlete admitted that he could have continued to lift, but it just so happened that he loved literature more, and in fact, he devoted all the subsequent years of his life mainly to literature and left a bright mark there, as well as in sports. It is worth noting that before Vlasov joined weightlifting, American athletes dominated the heavyweight division, and this has been happening for many years. There were many famous names among them: Paul Anderson, Tommy Cano, James Bradfield. But after Vlasov's arrival, the situation on the platform began to change dramatically in the following years. It was Soviet athletes who began to win the heavyweight championship. And this era, in fact, was started by Yuri Vlasov himself. Athletes from all over the world treated Yuri Vlasov with great respect and considered him a worthy person and athlete. They corresponded with the same Paul Anderson for a long time by letters and communicated quite well. However, Yuri Vlasov had more than just resounding victories. He had a lot of problems, including health problems, right after the end of his career. Health problems began to haunt Vlasov right after he finished his career. Years of enormous loads, constant weight loss, experimental weightlifting, all this could not pass without a trace. His cardiovascular system was particularly affected. Subsequently, he suffered a stroke, and he also had other diseases related to blood vessels and the heart. Yuri Vlasov openly admitted in interviews and autobiographical texts that after completing his sports career, he suffered not only physically but also mentally. He wrote about lingering depressions, feelings of emptiness and inner breakdown. And all this appeared precisely after he retired from the sport, especially after his second and final retirement. After 1968, it all started for him. He has repeatedly said that sport was not just a job for him, but the meaning of his whole life. When this meaning disappeared, a mental emptiness began. Vlasov also noted the feeling of loneliness and detachment from people with whom he used to be close. He was a very educated, thoughtful man, but in society he was often perceived as a strong weightlifter. It put a lot of pressure on him, but having found the strength, he was able to return to training, and almost until his last years of life he trained with a barbell precisely to maintain his health, and he confessed that he loved it all very much. Even if all these loads were no longer in the sports profile, after completing his sports career, Yuri Vlasov did not stay away from physical education and sports. In 1989, he was elected president of the USSR Athletic Gymnastics Federation. At that time, this trend was actively developing and represented the Soviet equivalent of bodybuilding, but more with a focus on wellness and physical development without an explicit demonstration of the cult of the body. Athletic gymnastics was not perceived as some kind of secondary, frivolous sport. With his participation, methodological materials were created, mass competitions were held, and a healthy lifestyle was promoted. He promoted this direction primarily as a direction for health, which helps even people with illnesses to return to a normal lifestyle, as well as helps in life in general. Now, let's remember about his best results in weightlifting. The best competitive total is 580 kilos, 195 kilos in the bench press, 170 kilograms in the snatch, and 215 kilograms in the clean and jerk. Prior to 1972, weightlifting competitions included these three exercises: jerk and push the barbell. In the snatch, Yuri showed a maximum of 172.5 kilograms. It was at the Olympic Games in Tokyo in 1964. But this approach was not taken into account in the sum at that time, and it was precisely a record approach. In the barbell push, the athlete showed a maximum of 215.5 kilos. It was in the same year, 1964, when Yuri was breaking records one by one and could have risen much more if he had stayed longer in this sport. Vlasov remained an independent thinker until the end of his life. Vlasov remained a fighter until the end of his days. He stood up to all the difficulties of life very rigidly, and such an example is really motivating when a person shows a high level of strength, when a person can use this strength to cope with other difficulties in life, because Yuri Vlasov's most important strength. It's the power that's inside him. It was thanks to this power that he became physically strong. The athlete himself passed away on February 13, 2021 at the age of 85. His death marked the passing of not just a great athlete and man, but an entire era. a man who embodied strength, intelligence, courage, and personal honor, staying true to yourself in the most difficult times, no matter what. He set 31 world records and 41 USSR records. Arnold Schwarzenegger himself admired him and called him his idol. I even met with him personally several times to see such a legendary athlete and to get his autograph. And it was Yuri Vlasov who motivated Arnold Schwarzenegger to achieve great heights in life. Schwarzenegger emphasized Vlasov's uniqueness, and he wrote a whole post on his social media after he found out that Vlasov had died. And it stated the following: "He taught us all that impossible is just a word." And it was this thought that Arnold repeated in honor of his memory. I hope this video was useful and interesting for you. As always, I will be grateful for your support. It helps in the development of the channel. Do not forget to click on the bell so as not to miss the new release. Subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching Sports Guru with you. See you later.